home on the range on the podcast known as
Trapped Under Plastic, the mini painting podcast that covers literally any other hobby for half of its duration.
Sad but true.
Got him.
Boom. Got him. In case you all didn't know, we have a special guest today. Our longest running guest, right? The most repeats.
Is that true? Am I the most repeated guest? I don't know. I come here like once a year, so.
I think that makes it.
I think you're definitely the most, yeah. Also, I got a question for you, Vince. Do you think that assimilation is inherently a bad thing?
No, of course not. I want to be part of the collective.
Okay. Also, I just realized that we are not centered in frame. Give us a moment. We'll fix that.
There you go.
I wanted to start this podcast with Vince by giving him gifts.
Okay.
Okay, Vince, I have two gifts.
Are we just picking up here? Or are you just going to let that first part ride?
Oh, yeah, that was good enough.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
good
cool.
enough. Vince, I brought you the best flavor of sparkling ice, Starburst Strawberry. There you go. That's for you.
Thank you.
I didn't know if you were going to come here with Starburst or with sparkling ice in tow. That was a fool of me.
Oh, obviously I can't bring it on the airplane, but yes, as soon as literally the person delivering my sparkling ice showed up 30 seconds before John, I'm sure you passed each other on the way to the building.
I saw her in the hallway, and I was like, what? This is a random person. That's not a UPS person. And I walk in, I see Vince with a bag of sparkling ice. I'm like, of fucking course.
In every major city, Vince has a person,
Right.
That person's on standby.
Got my hookup.
They're on retainer. And then whenever he calls on them, they just show up with sparkling ice.
Sparkling ice arrives.
All right, the other gift I have for you are the Magic the Gathering proxy cards
Oh, yes. I'm so excited.
that my patron Ellie made, and they are amazing proxies. I think Scott has seen these, but there you go. Vince's big dumb face is a Mox Opal.
I am so excited to be a Mox Opal. I'm worth way more than you,
I know,
so that's fine. That's what this says to me.
but I'm a win condition.
You are. That is true. I can't argue with that.
You're also
The trash or treasure.
Trash or treasure.
She got that from. I think that's from the Snarling Badger Studios art that we use at
yes.
the like on our website and stuff. I'm pretty sure that's where she got that from. So that's fantastic. And the Cloudstone Curio with the tendies with the dip.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a golden demon is the curio, but it's made out of chicken tenders
Yes,
with cane sauce.
that is incredible. No, it's not cane sauce. That looks like maybe more of a ranch-based dip, perhaps.
Oh, Southwest Ranch.
Could be.
Yeah, I think I'd go there.
This is amazing. Tell your patron that this is truly like the coolest thing ever. This is amazing.
But she is coming to Nova.
All right. Well, I will tell her in person.
Yeah, her and her boyfriend, and they want to play Magic. So,
Then that will happen.
all right, and then we'll play some Commander, and you could maybe play yourself.
I will definitely. I will build a deck with a Mox Opal in it. Like I'll build a gross, awful, disgusting deck that's meant to go so fast, and I'll have 6 mana on turn 2. Sounds good.
Yes.
Then your opponents can channel, what is it, DJ? I forget his name, but you say, congratulations.
Oh yeah, sure. Next
played
game.
yourself.
Yeah, you played yourself. You played yourself.
All right, let's get on to the Preamble Ramble. Guys, do you know about vertigo?
Yeah, the sense of like being
Falling?
falling. Yeah, sure.
Is it
I think it's more like the sense of imbalance, right?
Yeah. You ever
being
experienced
off now.
vertigo?
I mean, sure, of course. Have you ever had like an inner ear infection or something? I mean, I've watched the movie Vertigo as well. It's one of Alfred Hitchcock's best.
Okay.
Right. That's what I thought of.
I hadn't until last weekend.
Oh no.
I was playing video games until 3 a.m., which is like my regular Saturday routine. And then I went to bed, and I was just like, I laid down, and I was just like, my head was just spinning constantly. So then I was like, okay, I'm just going to sleep this off. Woke up, I did not sleep that off. I woke up, and I couldn't like really walk around very much.
What?
Whoa.
And I didn't do anything different like the days like leading up to that, other than like I was painting a bunch of like trim like overhead. And so maybe like staring up for like an hour and a half and like trying to focus. I was like trying to paint trim without taping it.
Oh yeah, that's the way to go.
And I know. So it's faster, but there's a bit of a learning curve. We
Yeah.
can discuss that later on, different painting techniques. But that's the only thing I did differently. And then like I was decommissioned for that entire day. And then I slept for like 10 hours, and then I'm like 95% better. But still, every day I go to sleep and I lay down, my head spins for like, I don't know, maybe like 5 minutes, and then it goes away.
This feels like a very elaborate excuse to not have to paint your house anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was on that Sunday, I did not have to paint, and it was amazing.
And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I'm
You
like,
can't verify this.
whoa, I need to sit down and eat some Oreos, honey. Whoa.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I wonder, like, I mean, obviously you deal with this. You know blood sugar levels and being important. I wonder if you didn't have like super low blood sugar or something. Like, did you not eat, or did you eat something different that day, or were there any changes in your eating habits that day?
Dr. Vince. I can't say for sure because I may have just like laser focused on video games and like not eating something. But it's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the first thing I would pick out, right? Like it comes to me because I've been there. I mean, I know I've got to guess. John can't be there or he'll die. So pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that could be. There's a variety of symptoms that can come from having low blood sugar, and being dizzy and kind of off balance is certainly a key one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you didn't wake up, although when you've gone to multiple days and you've obviously eaten meals there,
Yeah.
it leads me to think that may not be it, but it could have been that tied to that first time. Or quit putting pond water in your ear before you go to bed at night.
That's
Sure, yeah, you got to watch out for that. Yeah, don't go swimming in those filthy like drainage ditches anymore.
Okay, I'll stop doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to diagnose me, you can do it down in the comment section below.
Put your ideas. Why was Scott messed up?
For a day. All right, anyways.
You got a brain worm. Yeah, I want to talk about heavy body acrylics for a second, boys.
All right, I'm ready.
Sham.
I mean, they're very. Yeah, if you're painting on a canvas, I think they're probably pretty useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple more companies that have come out with heavy body acrylics.
Yes.
Pro Acryl just came out with a set, which I've messed around with just a little bit, and theirs are slightly different, and it kind of lead me to be pretty excited about what they could be. But there's Scale Color Artist ones that are heavy body. Mindwork Games makes some heavy body. There's some other companies that make heavy body, and then there are also miniature painters like Matt DiPetrio, who paints almost exclusively in heavy body acrylics. Have you guys used them much?
Sure.
Not much, but some.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, obviously, we're talking about something that existed long before miniature paints did.
Yes.
Like, right? So obviously, you mentioned all the mini hobby versions of those, but of
Right.
course, you can go to the store and buy Golden or Liquitex or
Yes.
any of these traditional art brands. And I mean, obviously the number one thing that they're going to do that besides being like way thicker, hence the name, right? Is, they list things like the pigments that are on there. They also don't have a lot of the extra additives in them to do things like even out the opacity, to even out the finish, right? So and all that information will be labeled, but you'll see like opaque, semi-transparent, transparent. It'll have like a finish thing on it. So you'll often get like, so if, for example, if you've ever used like an HBA magenta, that thing is probably, and it's like the true, if it uses that true pigment, it's going to be like shiny as you're painting with like a little magenta gem.
Yes. Yeah, I felt that. The miniature painting companies that come up with their own, they seem to address that to kind of bring them more towards the median, which I think is a good thing. And then when you look at something like Chimera paints feel like they were like, okay, how do we make heavy body acrylics just like slightly more palatable? And that was kind of their intent in the product.
Sure.
As single pigment or minimal pigment for mixing.
As little of the melange
Yes.
as possible.
Oh, the spice
Yes.
melange.
I
Controls the spice. Controls the universe.
you guys done?
No.
No.
Oh,
We're going to talk more about Dune later.
Jesus Christ. I get it. They have blue eyes. Okay, so
Excuse me, it's the eyes of the Ibad. Okay, going on.
all right, nerds. We done for real this time? Okay, so my thought with heavy body acrylics is that you have to still thin them.
Yes,
Right?
of course.
And so they have a higher pigment density, a higher pigment load,
Do they?
which is a bigger
Do
thing.
they inherently have just more pigments than their soft body cousins?
Yes, because there's less other. So, yes, mathematically, because they
By a ratio.
correct by a
Okay,
ratio,
but not
Yeah.
actual amount.
Yeah, I mean, density is I don't know how we're calculating it, but like because there's less other sort of medium and function in there, right? Like your paint consists of three basic things, right? So which is the medium, the solvent, and the pigment. Okay, those are your three primary things behind acrylic paints. The solvent for our acrylic paints is water. The medium is the acrylic binder, and then pigment is pigment. And obviously, if you subtract out a lot of water and acrylic medium. It's mostly acrylic medium and like a lot less sort of water and heavy body acrylic. So you're ending up with more pigment sort of by happenstance.
But to make them usable on miniatures, you're typically thinning them somewhat. And so you're kind of getting back to a more similar ratio, I'd say, for miniature paints. But I've grown to really appreciate the ability to have a higher ceiling on working time and thickness because heavy body acrylics have a much longer open time compared to miniature painting acrylics. And so live blending and color application seems to really gives you this interesting opportunity to add a lot more depth, feels a lot more like oil painting, obviously not to that extreme of open time, to the point where it can be annoying. But in using them, I'm like, I've really found I've enjoyed them. However,
okay, I wasn't sure if this was going as you hate them or you're joining Matt DiPietro and just like this is your new thing now. I don't know where he's going.
I think if I painted like Matt, where I paint in like larger scale stuff all the time, I would probably use them much more, or maybe full time, because at a smaller scale, you really have to worry about that paint thickness obscuring details. You can really get yourself in trouble
if you don't thin it way down, or if you like. There's another little small hiccup is like our traditional brushes that we use for miniature painting, let's just say the sable brushes, are really made for watercolors. Right, like that's actually the purpose of your Winsor & Newton Series 7 or something like that. Right, they're made for watercolors, and so as a result of that, they're very soft. Right, they're very soft brushes. And like if you stick one of those brushes just into the raw heavy body, it's like it just like bends. It can't get at it, and it's like hard to pull anything out. So you almost like you got to mix them differently, thin them differently with like a synthetic brush or the back of the brush or something like that. Usually. Yeah. You know, you can work thick. You're right. It tends to be easier on a bigger scale. But you can if you like use a synthetic brush and just like stab in and apply the dab, and you sort of feather heavily. Like you're a lot better off using different techniques like feathering with those, right? Where you just take a little dab, you kind of put a big blop on there, and then just like,
which is the main way that I use them. Yeah. So the one heavy body paint that I use far and away more than any other one is titanium white.
Sure, of course.
Well, I use Yosonia, but same thing. I do that exactly. I put a thick dab, a little tiny dot of white paint, clean my brush, and then feather it out.
Yep.
Because in my head, if you have titanium white from Chimera and from Yosonia, maybe we can assume that they both have like 20 milligrams each of titanium white pigment, right? And then if you add more water to the thick stuff, it becomes less opaque and more translucent, and it's less valuable, I think, for miniature painting applications. In some instances, you want physical texture on your larger scale figures, like busts and stuff.
Right.
But like, how often do you actually want that? I feel like not for my average painting. Sometimes maybe, but not always. And so I feel like they don't have a place in miniature painting other than for like niche circumstances. Like the white feathering, the highlight feathering, or for shadow feathering, or for like texture when you want it. I would never use a full range of that stuff for like all of my painting.
Like your daily driver?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I think.
You know, Matt is an interesting thing because, you know, with his style, he works really, really thin. Okay? So Matt uses heavy body acrylics. And if you look, first of all, it's very funny because Matt always uses the giant Masters and palette or whatever.
That huge one,
the 6x4 footer.
Yeah, he's like coming in with a Warcry table palette, Warcry board. So at any rate, and he thins them all way down, right? So like he's working very, very, very thin with it, and just like layering and building up almost basically he's working in glazes most of the time.
Sure. But I think probably one of the big takeaways of why he works with that kind of paint is that you have the purity of the pigments,
right?
And so they mix so much better to still create interesting, more vibrant, lively colors.
Yeah, 100%.
As we've seen you do much mixing in most standard miniature paints, they lose their punch 9 times out of 10.
Yeah,
you get real desaturated real fast because you're mixing a bunch of pigments that who knows how they interact, right?
There's a lot of white and blacks and desaturated browns in there to begin with, just to kind of make it that ochre or whatever, instead of it being a true ochre pigment.
or to mat it out, or to increase its opacity, or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Vince, do you have a Preamble Ramble topic, maybe?
I do. Why, what is this?
Oh!
As I hit the mic. It probably doesn't make any noise. That's fine. Ba-boom! This is Rain in Iron, the newest game from Uncle Adam and I. It's out and available now. I'm sure that there's a link in the description because these guys are good guys, and I'm sure somebody put it down there. So check it out. Rain in Iron is a standalone sequel to our first game, Rain in Hell. You don't need their previous game. Everything you need is right here in these 76 pages. The demons have escaped the post-apocalyptic wasteland of hell and returned to Earth.
As they do.
Demons!
Hungry for human souls. But when they arrive through the portal, the world of medieval fantasy that they had left behind when the portal was closed is no longer present. And in fact, there's no humans at all. The only thing left on the Earth are these artificial robots. The children of humanity who have now taken over the Earth. The demons, infuriated at the lack of souls and not believing the robots that there are no humans left, then begin a war to conquer the Earth that they were so long kept from.
Oh.
So at any rate, yeah, it's a game of robots versus demons. Solo, co-op, skirmish play. Everything's in here. Like I said, it uses like a dynamic scenario system. There's sort of 10 different base scenarios, but every time they're going to play different like things you roll out to make different sort of stuff like that occur in the scenario. There's also 3 narrative scenarios to continue the ongoing story for the Rain and Helliverse.
Oh, cool. Okay.
There's like an ongoing narrative that we've done through narrative scenarios back through our first expansion, which was called the Oculus Sphere. And like you can make your robot host or your demon cabal. Both of them play differently. They're not mirror images of each other. Like the demons are all melee and they're very individualistic and stuff like that and how they play. The robots are very synergistic and play very differently. Like they're mostly ranged attacks, stuff like that. So you've got a mostly ranged force against a mostly demon force, though you can also, if you want to, you can play like robots against robots or demons against demons. You can go nuts. It's your game.
Yeah, when we did the play test of this game, I played the demons in the first game.
Yeah, it was you and Sam, right?
Yeah, and Sam shot the shit out of me and against my poor demons until then I realized I got to take out his key synergy pieces. It wasn't, you don't shoot the guy, you don't murder the robot that is shooting you to death. You shoot the support thing that's making them shoot more and shoot harder.
Yeah.
And then the robots, so it was like trying to figure out and having to jump behind terrain. And it was like, I can't get shot right now. And then you flank them from the other side. And then you get your fast demons coming in here. And then you got your big demon. That's the big distraction. Carnifex. You're like, and then you're like, psych, I'm getting you from the side.
Yeah, but it was you and Sam versus me. And who played with me?
Was it Ben?
Ben.
Ben,
Yeah. Who won that game?
I think you guys won that game.
As the robots? AI?
Yeah, you were the robots.
You were the robots.
You were Team Wally.
Wally is coming back.
I do think that this is a great basis for a script for Wally 2.
Oh, of course.
Demonic Boogaloo.
Wally and Eve have to fight the hordes of hell spilling forth from portals. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, there's no humans left. They're just like picking up trash and what are these big scary things with teeth?
I think that'd be absolutely if that's the story you want to tell for yourself, then I can't say it. That's fine. Just a quick shout out to Brandon Gilliam, who is our artist for all the interior artists. The art here on the back came from Brandon. Those out in the audience may recognize Brandon and his art. He did a lot of the original one-page rules art.
Oh, yeah, it does look similar. Okay, wow.
Yep. So just a lot of really cool art pieces. Brandon was awesome to work with. I love like stuff like this one right here, the one we blew past there, that one where the robot has just like blown a hole out of the demon.
Okay.
I can send your editor like all these cool art pieces so they can share some of them.
Yeah,
I have all these individually.
do.
But we were really happy with it. Obviously the idea is the demons look like whatever you want, the robots look like whatever you want. It's really about, it's sort of miniatures agnostic, of course. So it's really about you customizing your force and making it play out how you want. Especially over the course of a campaign, there is a full campaign system in here, so it's not just like a one and done. You can run and intersperse solo, co-op, or skirmish games in there. Like you can play a solo game, then your friend can come over, you can play a game, then you can play a game against each other, and that's all fine. It's still just adding experience and building up and customizing your force.
What's your favorite thing about this game compared to Rain in Hell?
Okay, so what a great question. I love that. So we added a new function in here since it's about taking over Earth of these territories. So you see here, it's got this nice little picture of the demon on this, or the robot, demon on this thing, sorry, on this little robotic piece.
You got the demons climbing up the spire.
Yeah, exactly, right? So at any rate, one of the things you do over the course of the campaign is you actually can gain control of territories, and a lot of the scenarios interact with this. So you can gain control of like foundries, power plants, nexus points, religious sites. Like some are more technological, some are more classically mythological or spiritual or religious or whatever. And those then add additional bonuses, and you end up fighting over them. Like by taking control of them, they become the things you fight over and can lose control of or effectively become damaged as the campaign goes on. You have to repair them then. So they add cool bonuses and unique abilities to your troops. Once you've, the more territory you gain, it adds cool and unique abilities, as would be obvious, because you're actually fighting over Earth, so we wanted to make that real somehow.
Okay, you're building your empire.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, very cool. Awesome.
I like that. So you guys typically come out with a new game about once a year, about right at the start of summer.
We have one big game that usually comes out, at the start of summer, but as defined by every normal human who thinks like summer starts in May, not June 21st, which is crazy. Here in North America, at least, if you live in Australia, I guess the start of your winter. Congratulations. But the basically before TMX, which is Adam's Tabletop Minis Expo, his convention, and then we launched Snarl, which is our zine, which generally has a small game in it and then expansion content for all of our games. So it'll add new equipment, new campaign options, new scenarios, whatever, stuff like that. That'll come out usually in early November.
Okay. So you get you get double dip each year, one big release, new release, and then you get the bonus content, bonus kind of fun game in that zine. And that zine is just something that people can just pick up digitally, right?
That's right. Yeah, they're usually digital. They're generally about $8. It's digital. It's a PDF. You can buy it. It is formatted, so it's literally a zine. So that means it's formatted thusly it comes with a file. You can just read it straight through as a PDF, but there's always a second file in there that you can print out, and it'll do the special zine printing where you can fold it and then staple the middle. So it's page 1, and then it prints out in a weird way. I don't know how it's like magic, right? So you put it together, and it's when you fold it, it's oh, page 1 is next to page 2, but in the printing it was page 1 and then page 4 or something.
It was upside down or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But it all works when you do it properly.
Right.
Fold it. So
magnets, how do they work?
How do they work? Absolutely.
Nobody knows. Okay, so you're headed off to TMX. This is why you're in our neck of the woods, because you want to take a little side trip before you head over to TMX.
Yes.
That fun little Tabletop Minions Expo.
There you go.
That takes place at it's at a college.
Yes.
Dorm room.
It's in a college. Yes, it's in one of the main buildings at the college. Yeah. In Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
It's great because when I went there, it felt like
there are dorms upstairs. You can actually stay in one of the dorms, I believe.
Yeah. It felt like you were going. It was back to college. And walk in, and it was just this air of the school year's over. There are still some people working there, and some students still they're there working for the summer or something. It just felt oh man, I just feel like the world is my oyster. I'm gonna go down this basement and play some nerdy games.
Yeah, it's a fun setting for it because, yes, it is summer. The semester or quarter, whatever they run on, has ended, so there's not a lot of students around or anything really happening. But you're right, there's still the skeleton crew there keeping the ship alive for those summer students, those tryhards.
Right.
And it's also nice because you got a lot, obviously, since you're on a college campus, there's a bunch of restaurants and stuff nearby, so you can just easily walk and get a slice of pizza, all the standard amenities one would enjoy at a college campus.
And it is. You got a double dip here. It's a college town, and it's in Wisconsin. So you can have as much liquor as far as the eye can see because it is a bar every other building, and it's glorious.
Wisconsin is just one giant bar.
It is. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Have you seen the map of bars versus grocery stores or whatever, and it just inverts in Wisconsin?
Yeah. Right. But they all have character, and there's all a story to be told. So you need to visit them all in Wisconsin. It's great because most bars in a downtown Wisconsin, any town, in Wisconsin. It kind of feels like you're walking into like an old-timey tavern that's like been around for hundreds of years. It's super dark, and there's a couple of like low lights here and there. There's interesting music playing in some back corner. You know, the floor is always a little bit sticky, but people are just generally happy there, and you can get beer for cheap. It's just a great thing.
Yeah, I go to one bar all year, and I will go, Saturday night or whatever. That'll be the one time I go to a bar all year, because we all go after TMX. We all go to this like bar that's kind of near the place. You can walk to it. And it's the only bar I go to. I love it. It's great. I, of course, proceed to immediately take the role of number one DJ.
Oh, yeah.
I walk up, slide the cash in, program out the music for, the time we're there. Got to make sure
Do you wear the apron at the bar?
I do not wear the apron at the bar.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No,
I go loose a little bit.
I go, yeah, absolutely.
One button.
Blend in with the civilians.
Anyways, Rain and Iron available at Target and Walmart. No, I was kidding. It'll be down in the description for sure with a link. Check it out.
Yeah, so you can get Rain and Iron either digital or physical or both.
That's right. So it's $11 for the digital, $17 for the printed book plus the PDF. And if you want to see more information on it besides what I've shared here, if you go to the link down below, there's like a full battle report there. Adam has an explanation video. There's documents and videos and all sorts of additional information. So you can kind of learn everything you'd want about it before you make your purchase.
Wow, look at you, professionals.
That's
Very
right.
cool.
Yeah. You can even find a list of models of different model producers that make demons and robots for the game.
That's really handy, because I always find with miniature agnostic games that I'm like, oh, this is a good excuse for me to kind of dip my toes into other interesting manufacturers. Maybe they're 3D printed models. Maybe they're smaller manufacturers that make really cool models that I just didn't really have a purpose for before, but they're still good. And it's nice to be able to be like, here's some good examples.
Yes, Adam and I spent some time before and just like scouring the internet for like interesting STLs and like really weird small producers of miniatures who just like they have some tiny range or something. Yeah, we really try to hunt up everything so people can go from like, of course we list Games Workshop, but down to small people who make 4 different minis.
Okay, I dig it. Scott, you got something else to share? I just know you do.
I don't.
Oh fuck.
Oh no, we're off the rails.
Vince and I have something else exciting to share.
That's right.
You thought you were just going to get one exciting new release today, but no. There are 2. Vince, we're combining our forces to make something new. What is that thing?
You got to do the thing. There it is. Wonder Twin powers activate. That's right. So if you haven't gotten enough of John and I, which frankly does seem almost impossible. Yes, John and I are, we've started up Fireball the Gazebo, which is our new RPG podcast. The first episode will be already out as you're listening to this. It launched on Tuesday, June 11th. That is assuming John can figure out all the upload things and gets that all correct. But hopefully, fingers crossed, that's the day.
That's a big ask.
And it's an RPG podcast. We talk about D&D, RPGs, and just our love of this genre and everything about it. It'll have a whole smattering of different things that we cover around the space. What's going on in the RPG space, our own experiences and anecdotes, advice for players and GMs alike, as well as sort of critical topics that we're trying to really dig in. It's a very like what we really want it to be is like a casual but pretty thoughtful discussion. It's still funny, don't worry. On the role playing game world. John and I have both been playing RPGs for basically 30 years, and so there's just a lot of time, a lot of our life dedicated to this thing. It means a lot to us, and we want to share that love. The way I described it yesterday is it's a full meal, right? Because you've got a little bit of serious discussion, okay? Then you've got our spicy takes, okay? And then the dessert, that's the main course. And then the dessert is like, we really are sharing our love for this thing and trying to get you, help you love it as well. That's that wonderful, luscious dessert at the end.
Yeah, and none of it is taken very seriously.
No,
because what fun is that if we're not having fun doing it? And I think the catalyst for us deciding to do this was in our many virtual painting hangouts over the last couple of years, we find ourselves talking about our D&D games and ideas and funny stories and just different things. And we're like, man, this is kind of fun. We should maybe do this and just record it. And that's exactly where it came from. And purposely, we want it to be all-inclusive no matter what side of RPGs, no matter what specific RPG you're interested in. Because if you've never been a Dungeon Master or you've always been a Dungeon Master and anywhere in between, that we want to be all-inclusive and to get something to take away, something that gets excited for you to play, something for you to plan for your next game, or maybe restart if you haven't played for a number of years. So that's kind of our kind of core philosophy with this.
That's right.
I'm not a podcast listener much, but I might need to tune in for some hot DM tips, though.
Absolutely. Well, don't worry. We got you covered, buddy. I know you're getting into the space. Now you are doing a Star Wars thing, which I am soundly against, but that's all right. I still.
Why?
It's, the Star Wars world is nuts. That's no good. That's like
It's nuts.
It's no good. It's a mile wide and inch deep. I'm not interested. Like you're gonna play one of two games. You're all either gonna play Andor or you're gonna play like a Jedi game. That's it. There's only 2 games in Star Wars. That's it. Everything else. If you don't like this kind of commentary and you disagree, why don't you put in the comments down below, coward, why exactly Star Wars is good to role play in?
Do you want to get into this right now? The reason why it's good to role play, you just described it. You said it's a mile wide and inch deep, which means that you get to create the depth. They give you all of the options, and then you go deep wherever you want with the options. So there's so many ways you can go.
Yeah, I mean, joking aside, like I was of course just being a little bit hyperbolic.
You don't joke about Star Wars here, okay?
No, I generally don't like Star Wars very much. That is true. That's not a joke. I've never found role-playing in the Star Wars world very compelling. Like that is real. I understand what you're saying. And like if you find the world compelling, I think that what you're describing there of like finding the depth and making it is exactly right. I don't care enough. Like all I think of all the time is just Tracy Jordan running around on the highway with a cone, like a traffic cone, yelling, "I'm a Jedi." Like that's that's what role playing in the Star Wars world is. It's either that or you're just trying to be Andor. Like we get it. Yep, it's gritty. Yep, look at you gritty.
Did you like people. You like Andor?
Sure, it's a good show. It's a very well written show.
Did you watch season 2 as well?
I have not watched season 2 yet.
Okay, cool.
But I mean, I will. Like it's just like it's an extremely well written show. So I have
think
no
2
doubt
is better than 1 for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I think that there are very compelling stories that can be told in the Star Wars universe and through an RPG. The trap, that's a trap, is
nice.
Is leaning too much into the world to carry the weight of your story, as opposed to just say, I want to write a compelling, interesting story that is, if I wrote this one paragraph, it doesn't ever say the word Star Wars. It doesn't ever reference a planet. It doesn't ever reference any specific things. If this story is compelling, and then I can drop it into a world or an IP that really excites me, the story will be able to hold its own weight, and we're just adding the flavor to the world I enjoy. I think that's key. Anytime you play in a RPG that is to a very distinct IP, where it often falls is for doing exactly that. Well, just playing in the Warhammer universe will make this an awesome story and an awesome game. And
no, you gotta have the plot and the story there. No, honestly, Star Wars is the kind of thing where I would love to play it under a DM like you, who has a deep love of the world and the material. Like when I'm not interested in a particular system or world, what I like to do is then play under somebody who really is interested, like who it's the juice, because that can often ignite the love in me. I've had that happen a few times where like I wasn't interested in the thing, but then I played under somebody who really did love the thing.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And they showed me what was to love about it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that is the power of being a great DM, is that you can be like, no, look, I really love this world. I know, enough about it, and I know how to tell a good story in it. I want to really get you into it, and you can bring characters along. And what that can do is it can ignite in the player a lifelong love of that world. I've had that happen with multiple games. I've just never had it happen with Star Wars yet. So.
Okay, not yet.
Not
it's
yet.
An opportunity. No pressure, Scott. You have to be an amazing DM.
Oh God.
So yeah.
Well, John's training me, so I'm doomed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll be strictly from the dark side. Yeah. All of your ideas will be nefarious in origin. But yeah, I like that. I like that idea, Vince, of Scott running a Star Wars RPG game where we get to be the characters?
No.
I'm gonna be a droid.
He would ruin it.
I'm gonna be a droid. I'm gonna just tell you right now. I'm gonna be the trash can droid where it's just got little feet.
Yeah, you're just like beeping along. Yeah, the beauty of Star Wars is that there is comedy in that system, and so you can have in that universe. I mean, so you can have fun with it. Whereas we were talking about the Dune universe a couple episodes ago, and I want to play one of those games, but I'm concerned that there's no humor in that at all. And I find that when you have a bunch of awkward geeks getting together, trying to role play, trying to be a character, these are all new skills for a lot of us. And so ways to diffuse that tension is with comedy and laughing and humor.
Yes.
And if that doesn't have a place in the universe you're role playing in, it's like, does it just get awkward fast? Does it get uncomfortable, you know?
Well, everyone's got to try to be Daniel Day-Lewis, and that is inevitably not going to work.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it is a much more serious world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you know, you don't know the Harkonnens.
Yeah,
They're brutal.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like that. Whoa. Okay, that's a different world. You know, like you got a minute of comedy where you can be like, he is the least on guy. You know, like that's what you.
Right.
That's your closest thing.
As it's written, you know.
Yeah, to like meme comedy. No, I agree. Very serious worlds like that are more of a challenge because your players have to step up, and you got to lean on like other parts of the experience. I think perhaps.
Okay.
So like you're right. Comedy is a great way to diffuse tension, but you can also just lean on like doing other things to help diffuse tension. So what I mean is like get the characters involved in other like side quests, like making things or crafting things or getting involved in other type of stuff can also be a way where they can just talk to you like a human. Because what you're really doing with comedy is presenting a chance for them to talk out of character, right? In some degree. Like to be a little bit out of character, like, yeah, we're cracking a joke that's using a little bit of more of our modern humor sensibilities, right?
Okay.
And so if you let them engage in like other types of things where they feel like they don't have to, because it's exactly that, where like you mentioned the Daniel Day-Lewis thing. If I must be the very serious Fremen all the time, where I have trained my entire life in this desert, every minute, every second, I must be aware because everything around me wants to kill me. There is no break in my focus. Right. If that's what you have to be, and you have to be on like that for your entire 4 or 5 hours of playing the game, that is exhausting.
Right. Yeah.
So you need to create those breaks where they're just like talking about other things, like, well, we're rebuilding an ornithopter or something. Okay, cool. You can just talk about that like you're going to talk like a human. Okay. My character does this, I do this, and let you talk normally.
My suit broke, and now it's all filled with pee in here.
Well, the suit was already full of pee.
I know,
the
but
pee is on the outside now.
Yeah, it's like the inside of my suit. There's just a layer, like a waterbed of pee, all the way up to my neck.
Oh, okay.
It's trapped inside.
It's trapped inside.
Okay, it's in
Even
between
worse.
the suit. Yeah, okay.
The worst case scenario.
Yeah. You know, sometimes these things happen. I was just thinking, I was like, oh, well, it would be great if you were like, you know, you're like trapped on Arrakis, but it's just a group of people that are spice addicts. They're addicted to fentanyl, and like your whole quests are to like steal copper and shit, so you can get enough money to get a little kick. And so you're just like little raiders, you're trying to.
If you live on Arrakis, you don't need to steal spice.
Yeah,
it's in the air. It's everywhere.
Yeah, but
that would be like if the meth was just in the air around you all the time.
But you've built up such a resistance. You need to get that higher kick.
Okay, you got to get the higher grade spice.
I mean, maybe you have a longer time between withdrawals.
I see.
You know,
no, I'd be going for that juice of Safu. Honestly, that's what I want.
See, there's a lot of depth to this storyline right here. Just a bunch of like scab picking meth heads. And they're just like
there are many different strange and unusual drugs within the Dune universe. Yes.
Okay.
It was written in the 60s.
Does Safu show up in the first book?
I don't think so.
It gets mentioned in passing because Piter takes some.
Okay.
And he gives the speech of it shows up in his speech.
Okay.
It is by will alone I set my mind in motion. It is by the juice of Safu that the lips acquire stain, the thoughts acquire speed. The thoughts acquire speed, the lips acquire stain, the stain becomes a warning. It is by will alone I set my mind in motion. There we go.
Beautiful poetry.
Absolutely.
It so reminds me of fantasy and sci-fi books from that era where like they have a very convoluted backstory thing and they mention it one time and you're just like, okay.
Yep.
Or whatever that was.
Right. You just take it as is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try not to think about it too much, or this 600-page book is going to take you 16 months to read.
No, I mean, like things like Dune or stuff like that, those are worlds that I love role-playing in general. I agree with you. There can be challenges that are unique to each of them. But, like, I love when authors have created a bunch of stuff that you can just, like, go and pick up little pieces of. That's, like... It's not that you can't create that stuff as your own DM. Like, I made my own world from scratch. And it's like, yeah, okay, we're all going to do that at some point as a GM, and that's fine. But, like, really getting to that level of craziness when you're playing in, like, an established world that somebody's worked on for, decades or whatever, how many books they wrote or whatever. That just, there's a layer there, right? Of you can always, like, as a GM you can just keep pulling little unusual oddities. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, not having the weight of having to do it all yourself, to carry the weight of creation on your own shoulders.
Absolutely.
And that area of just getting, like, there's just a treasure trove of inspiration there that I can pull from instead of trying to get inspired from some random thing. It's like, oh, man, I just watched the Blade movie, so now all the bad guys, Sith, are kind of vampire bad guy Siths now.
Okay.
Which would also be sweet, honestly.
Where is that Star Wars scene where it just I want
Blood orgy.
That would exactly. That would be a really good Star Wars scene, actually. Like, somebody gets brought into a club and then they realize that, like, everybody in here is like it starts and it's just like a normal rave and they're just in the club, and then, like, all of a sudden it's just like, I don't know what maybe it's still Blood Rain, I don't know, possibly, but, like, something comes out and it's just he realizes that everybody around him is Sith.
They're all just like, it's like a middle management, like, celebration Christmas party.
Okay, or that, yeah.
I mean, if it's old Empire, not every Sith is, like, super powerful.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's just like, oh, well, this is awkward.
The whole concept of there can only be one was a later on thing.
No, I mean, like, obviously in the Old Republic time, you have thousands and thousands of Sith running around. They have a whole empire.
Right. Are you an Old Republic lover?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
I do like that time period, actually, a lot better. One of my issues with Star Wars is the only interesting time period you can play in is the post original trilogy period, where they set the Mandalorian, like, around right in the, like, 5 years before and 5 years after the original trilogy.
Right.
That is the interesting time of that Star Wars. Whereas I love Old Republic. I love the Old Republic time period. I think that's,
like, KOTOR or SWTOR?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's spotted from a mile away. Okay, I get you.
Deeply loved that stuff.
Well, you like Star Wars then?
Yeah, I do love that. All right, you got me.
Came full circle on it. Yes.
All right, if you're interested in that kind of conversation, do check out Fireball, the Gazebo. I have a link down in the description.
All right,
what was that? Did you just like orgasm a little bit? You were just like, ha, ha.
Yeah. I was just looking at what the next thing we do on this podcast is. Like, I'd forget every goddamn time. It's a hobby update time, boys. It's time for hobby update.
Okay.
Vince, did you paint anything this week?
I did, actually. Yeah, I painted a lot of stuff. None of it's here with me.
Damn it.
I will try to send pictures along. Let's see. I'm in the middle of the Spira Mirabilis dwarf bust. I think I'll have a whip I can send along. So there's that. Also, I don't know when this is releasing, but it doesn't really matter. I'm working on I painted up one of the miniatures from the Paradise game found from Mindworks, Mindwork Games. And super cool. Oh, you're okay. Yeah. There you go. I painted up one of I really like the range. It's obviously shrunken down versions of a lot of their previous display models they made in the Paradise line. And I really I've painted several of those. So I did that. I did it all with actually the Mindwork heavy body acrylics.
Yes, so. I did as well. So we're simpatico there. I actually think for their models, because they've gone from, like, I don't know if they're like 72s, they're pretty big, the standard Mindwork scale.
Well, they had two different scales. So they had a bus scale, and then they had 54 versions.
54.
Yeah.
The shrink down from 54 to 32 works really well for their kind of design language in the sculpts, and they've removed just a little bit of things.
Yeah, they did get rid of some of the detail, which is
simplify things in a good way, where it's like the details that they have seem easy enough to pick out and they're distinct without all the tiny gobbledygook that even going from 32 to 54, like it's a pretty big jump in terms of what you can have from a level of detail. So
I believe when this comes out, it's June 18th that the game found campaign goes live. So depending on when this comes out,
I thought it was
June
18th. Either way,
they keep moving it, unfortunately, but
yes, but it'll be out on Game Found, and I think if you follow it and then back it, you get free mini too. You get a free mini.
Hey, there you go. So give it a follow.
Nice,
mini,
nice.
So that's what I painted.
Nice. Scott, did you do any hobbying this week?
Caught me on a slower week, but I did a little bit. I had another beginner in my office to do a similar video that I did in the past, where I sit down and go over kind of like a fundamental concept with someone who's newer to the hobby, and they have a bunch of like very natural and reasonable questions during that process. And so we are exploring the concept of layering, and I had Paul over, and Paul has an orc army, and I feel like orc physiology, like their arms and their faces, is just a great subject for layering.
Yeah.
There's just so many really obvious volumes all over those big beefy arms. And
Such
so,
well-defined muscles.
exactly, yeah.
Witness the muscularity.
Is that a reference?
Yes.
God damn it. All right, anyways. So we painted some orcs, but he has them. They were his models. I don't have them here to show. But otherwise, I have been writing a more cohesive set of rules for a miniature war game that I want Vince to test while he's here.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. So that's what my hobby time's been spent on.
I saw some like makeshift boards out there. I won't give any details about the boards, but I see boards with models on it.
Yeah, I had to put some Photoshop skills to use to get a hex grid with different colors and things on it. Yeah.
Yeah, look like a sweet Xerox copy job from like the 90s.
Yeah, it needs to fit on a 9.5 or 8.5 by 11 piece of paper for now. So,
Okay.
I can like change it and test things out quickly.
Exactly the right way to iterate an alpha
Yeah.
test. That's great. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that at all. Yeah. What are you going to... Excuse me, China, I'd like to pay you a lot of money to produce one single copy of
Right.
this test game that I will probably change. No, obviously
Right.
that's the right way to do it. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
easy. It's kind of like with mini painting, if you like get super into the weeds with like what kind of gear you need. I think with game design, it's very similar. You can get really into the weeds with like your cards and your tokens and your boards, making those look pretty before you've really established like the full rule set of the game, before things can change a lot.
Yeah, leave that till the very, 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 very end.
Yeah, so I'm using vampire models and dark eldar models right now to
Perfect.
represent things, and yeah, it's very lo-fi.
It works. Are they? So the vampires? Are they in like volleyball shorts?
Not yet,
And the
but they will be.
I assume this is a volleyball game because it got talked about so much at the Tough Lives.
Yeah, that was the number one surprising thing about Tough Lives, that people kept asking that question. But yes, it's the volleyball miniature war game 3-on-3.
I love that. I love that. I love Super Spike V-Ball for the original Nintendo, so I'm here for it. Yeah, it is kind of an odd week for hobby updates because we just recorded the last episode less than a week ago.
Yeah.
And we're a little ahead of schedule now because Vince is in town, so we had to make sure we corroborated with him. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have much. Well, I did just have the same thing. I'm working on these mind work models, and I painted one all the way through. And then I painted another one, just his skin, in a 3-step, these 3 steps painting skin to show like some of the value of an airbrush. But they're under the catalyst of this video is about, I don't believe we've been sold the correct bill of goods in the tool that is the airbrush. And
I'm ready for this spicy opinion. I'm ready to come.
What is the bill of goods?
I'm coming off the top ropes on this one, but go ahead.
Okay.
Lay out your wrong opinion.
okay.
These look nice though.
We've been told that the airbrush is the tool oftentimes is given the word hack or cheat because it's so good and it makes it so fast and your quality can get so much better so much quicker. Do you guys disagree that is a common sentiment in the hobby, or do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think people generally view it as a tool to, at minimum, do things like prime and base coat at accelerated speeds. Yes.
I think he means more than that, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is not what we're told. We are told a much wider umbrella of what it does.
I think maybe that can be a conclusion that can be drawn.
And I don't put it on any particular person or brand or anything.
It's
I
goobs.
think it's all goobs. And he's using his fucking thumb on the trigger. Here's the thing. It's kind of just like this permeated thing. Since I started miniature painting like 8 years ago, it's just there in the community, in the way that it's talked about, the way that we are shown things. It actually really aids itself in this era of shorts, and that it simply in 5 seconds or a 15-second short one step of an airbrush can make it seem like it's instant magic too.
Okay.
So it kind of compounds on that.
Okay.
And I believe that the airbrush is actually doing you a great disservice in the long term
Okay.
in both improving overall as a miniature painter and actually becoming a quicker miniature painter. Because what it does is it asks you to rely on what the tool can achieve quickly rather than learning how volumes, shape, color, and light actually work together. Instead of just doing the thing and pulling the trigger back, it impedes you from that growth and that learning. And thereby, you don't actually easily understand the situations where an airbrush is a great tool, and instead try to apply it as a one tool serves all purposes.
Okay, before I demolish this, I want to make sure I understand your argument. The thesis that you're advancing here is what? That it becomes a hammer, that it's a hammer, and so every problem becomes a nail,
Yes.
and hence you never learn how to use like a proper range of
It's,
tools.
it's an automated solution, right? It's like a
Right.
wash, you know? You apply a wash to a model. You got to think about how that matters for volumes and where shading goes. It does the thinking for you. An airbrush, in some sense, he's saying, does the thinking for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right. And what we do when we're told this, or we feel this innately, and I don't feel like I'm alone in like feeling that like, oh, if I was just really, really good at an airbrush, I could actually achieve the dramatic results that somebody with a paintbrush could achieve, but just much quicker. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Even painters that are amazing airbrush artists, and I look to the Sergio Callos and I look to the Angel Heraldez. Those are two great examples. The big aha moment for me, and that was the showcase of this skin on this guy, where I just painted his skin. Why that looks so great, it's pulled together at the end with the airbrush, but it was the brushwork prior in creating the base tones to define the shapes correctly, define the light angle correctly, and to actually create an opaque coat that you can then blend together with the airbrush later. It was not the airbrush that accomplished the quality of the work in the quick time. It was the understanding and the brush control that did that. You just saw the last step that it was pulled together and think that was the actual magic sauce, when in fact, it is not.
Well, in that case, sure. But there's plenty of examples where the airbrush is the whole hog, the magic sauce. Like on the carapace of my Talus paint engine, or even on the tiny little vials that go from teal to blue. That was all airbrush. You know, there was no undercoat of paint that I used to assist it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there aren't useful uses for it.
Okay.
I say that there are actually three main uses for an airbrush that it actually does really well.
Okay.
The first of which is priming. Okay, straightforward. The second of which is base coating with an asterisk if your model is like 60% or more one fucking color.
Okay.
Okay. It's great for Space Marines. And that's part of the issue that we have, I think, with this tool in this hobby, is that Space Marines are such a universally seen and beloved model that we see them on the great work that they can do on a model that is 96% one color. And therefore, we transform that into something else. Okay. So that's number two. 2.5 is in those situations where your model is mostly one color, a zenithal highlight from above. Okay. And even then, I don't think it's all that good.
I mean, wouldn't that just fall under priming?
Yeah, it's
Like
basically
priming. Number one priming, 1A zenithal priming.
I also think zenithal white is a scam too.
I-
From above, it actually does nothing unless you are doing one of two things. One, you're working with transparent paints over the top, but that's great. You've just desaturated your whole thing because you're working with white and gray underneath. Number two is actually if you use that light sketch to directly place your opaque first layers in different colors to accentuate and help you see where the light is coming from that angle.
I'm not going to argue.
Most
with
of us
you
don't
yet,
do that.
because we're gonna. I'm not letting you lay out your thesis.
Okay. And then the third thing that it can do really well is adding subtle, transparent colors through tinting through an airbrush, whether that's inks, whether that's contrast paints, whether that's thin down paints. Those are the things that it's good for. It is not good for everything else. And also, it is the theory that it just works faster is absolutely untrue when it comes to refinement and higher quality paint jobs. I really, really dislike how much an airbrush pulls you out of a flow state and chops up your actual painting. And when I'm knee deep and I'm working or whatever, and I want to be able to mix in different colors, and I want to add interesting tones, and I want to build up bounce reflections and all that stuff, chopping it up with 90 seconds of dealing with the cleaning out and the picking a color and the mixing the color of an airbrush is so much less organic of a creation space because it's chopping your work up. And I just feel like I don't come up with the more interesting final product because of all the work that I've done to pull me away from the creative mindset.
Okay. You've said so much.
Sorry.
And there's so much to address, you know?
Yeah.
With the last thing you just said, don't you think that's just due to a lack of comfort with the tool? Because, like, I get into a flow state with my airbrush. I got a bunch of little cups around me. I'll make mixes. I'll filter them. I'll get after it. I'll clean it out. I'll do it again. I may do a dirty pour into my brush with some ink to move up on something else. Like, I've done a lot of airbrushing these last 2 years, and I feel like the experience has got me very comfortable with all of those actions. So do you feel like that could come from a lack of experience with the tool?
I mean, I've used the airbrush a lot over the last 8 years. Over the last 2 years, when I've made my most growth as a miniature painter by a mile, I've basically put it on the sideline because I don't think it actually makes me a better painter. And I do think that you're absolutely right. With experience and comfortability, those things go faster. That there is a floor for anything you're talking about, for cleaning out, for remixing, for reworking. And I'm not even talking about any situation where you get speckling, you get a clog, you get anything, and then you're fucked for the next hour.
Troubleshooting.
And, that whole aspect of it, I just want to create. And to create a tint or to create an interesting color transition, however quickly you can do that with an airbrush. Now, there is things that an airbrush, its application method is different than a brush, but it's as simple as me dabbing the tip of my paintbrush on my palette and adding that interesting color, and then I can move to something else, or I can add another color really quickly. It's like, oh, how does that really work while it's there? Or no, while that's wet, now that burgundy, I'm going to put a little bit of blue right next to it while it's still wet, and I'm going to add that fade and over that. You can't do that with an airbrush.
Yeah, you can't take a different tool and use the exact same process that you do with a different tool. It needs to be a different process.
Right. My point is that the airbrush should be looked more like a very specific tool and be given the amount of time and expertise put into that appropriately.
Yeah.
When a paintbrush is just like, I struggle when I see new painters that want to spend so much of their time with an airbrush and so little time with a paintbrush, when that paintbrush, those hours in that paintbrush will help you so much more in the long run than, not that you should just totally ignore an airbrush. And again, I use it basically on every single model, mostly just for priming. But I just feel like the weight in which the bill of goods that we are sold is not accurate.
I think that last thing you just said is an interesting conversation topic. What I heard was more hours spent with the paintbrush will be more valuable to you as a miniature painter than more hours spent with an airbrush. Mm-hmm. And maybe this depends on the kind of painter you are, like maybe a display painter specifically.
Sure. If you're just painting Space Marine armies,
maybe not.
Maybe not.
Okay. So what do you think about that claim?
So, okay.
And here's why you're wrong.
Yeah.
Where's the fucking button, bro?
I was literally just going to say, here's why you're wrong.
It's the same.
Yeah.
The audio in my ears is the exact same as the time you recorded it. It's incredible.
First of all, I don't even agree with this whole bill of goods premise. By the way, Mark Twain once said, I'm sorry this letter's so long, I didn't have time to make it short. You should really think about advice like that when formulating a thesis. Not for nothing. But I don't believe in this bill of goods thing at all. With the airbrush, to me, what I was told the airbrush was good for when I originally bought my airbrush was it'll let you prime all the time. We don't have to worry about temperature or getting rattle cans. It'll obscure less detail. You can do some base coats, and it's fast if you're doing like a vehicle or something big. That's what I was told originally, and that's why I bought my first airbrush. And you know what? That's primarily what I used it for a long time. Like when I did my Space Marine Army, yeah, the airbrush was a huge part of it, and it was undoubtedly a massive time saver. Okay, as which, by the way, is not in any way you didn't contend otherwise.
No.
I'm not saying you didn't.
No.
Okay, but it's the same for doing Imperial Knights and stuff like that. You know, any kind of like big vehicles, Gundams, anything of that nature is hugely valuable. Inorganic, flat, large panels. You know, hugely valuable. Now, of course, it's not like a unitool. What I heard there was if you use this tool badly, then you'll have a bad time. Like, well, yeah, no joke. Any other great insights you want to rip off the dome there?
Right.
I mean,
they see that is I
don't
thoroughly
think we were
disagree
ever told.
that the community feels that this is a tool for the handful of very specific tasks. That is not how it's approached. And there's so many models that we see out there where the airbrush is used far beyond that to a great detriment. And we think that we're just not good enough yet to be able to paint each of those individual muscles on the orc's arm that are well defined, and that if we get good enough with the airbrush, that tool will paint those orc arm muscles as good or better than with a brush. And that is not true.
Yeah, I mean, again, I will say, okay, the proper way to use any tool in miniature painting is as part of an overall harmonious process where each thing is doing what it does best. When I paint display figures, I go back and forth between the brush and airbrush 5 times. Okay, let's just say. So like for a serious display model that I'm doing, I will generally, obviously, prime it with the airbrush, as you said. I will lay down actually my base coats with a brush because I want to establish my values quickly in a sort of sketch to understand where the light and shadow falls. And I want to get to learn the volumes. Like one thing that you do learn more with the brush very quickly is when you're forced to navigate with your brush the individual volumes, you will have to pay attention to them. The airbrush, especially at that early stage, is a broader tool. Okay. But then I will generally go to the airbrush and I use it to then refine and smooth and like hone in my volumes and tones, add in some saturation. Then I go back to the brush to build highlights, do micro details, stuff like that. Then I go back to the airbrush to then do the final punch of saturation, color toning, filtering, stuff like that. So like that's how I get to a high-end display figure, okay? Something that like looks, I think, pretty good. That's effectively when I painted your cheerleader, which there'll be a video coming out at some point in time in the future about that.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Oh, I loved that cheerleader. I showed you what she came, how she came out, right?
Okay. Vampire, right?
Yeah, she's a vampire. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's Buffy,
Comma.
the vampire,
The literal
comma Slayer.
Wait, she slays other vampires as a vampire?
Yeah. She's a vampire who also kills other vampires.
Kind of Blade-ish.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, sure.
Speaking
any
of
rate.
disco clubs with all vampires in.
All ties together, baby. But yeah, like when I worked on that, I more or less followed the exact process I described. And, you know, I am a surgeon with my airbrush, okay? Like I'm not as good as the people. You ever seen people who do like the actual airbrush art?
Yeah.
Who like
lines,
on
lines.
canvas and stuff, they're like they hold it with both hands and they have the guard off, obviously, because they want just the cleanest, tightest airflow. And they'll do a whole face. Right?
Yeah.
From nothing on canvas. And it's incredible to watch. I'm not that good. Okay. They're like a master surgeon, but I'm good. I can hone into individual areas. But the smaller you go in scale, I tend to use it less in refinement on 32 mil, 28 to 32 mil models. But once you're in sort of 54, I do find I use it quite often, if for nothing, and like, again, throughout the process, because what it's really good at is often, one, smoothing things out, especially like even if it's a small volume, and two is filtering and toning, right? You just do get a cleaner filter glaze application out of an airbrush than you do out of a brush. What it's bad at is establishing punchy values, micro details, building opacity, right? Like, and so to me, it's just like, well, yeah, I don't use the hammer on the screw, right? But also don't use the screwdriver on the nail. It's just a question of like, yeah, I could turn the screwdriver around and just bang the nail into the wall, right?
Right.
But that's not really the efficient way to do that. I'm going to have to work a lot harder. the point is that like when you're using it in a way it isn't intended to be used, you're not going to save time. You're going to actually waste time because you're doing something in the wrong way. But I think so like on a lot of that stuff, I agree with you. The issue where I just don't is I don't think I was ever told like you should do the whole fig with an airbrush or this is like a thing that you should paint as. Again, unless you're talking about like a tank. You know, you do a classic tank, right? You can do so much tank work with a brush. And then with an airbrush. And then you're like doing the modulation and weathering and stuff like that with sponges. And I mean, like I wouldn't try to sponge paint my whole stupid model either. But when I want to do neat, really organic random weathering, getting out a sponge and dipping it in the old Rhinox hide and dabby, it looks great.
It looks great.
Right? So again, right tool, right purpose. I'm not going to try to do that with an airbrush.
I don't see where you were saying here's why you're wrong. When
Your initial premise is
you
wrong.
just agreed with me.
Yeah.
But when I said the initial premise at the beginning, you both agreed with the initial premise. And now you're saying that you don't agree with the initial premise.
We would like to go to the videotape and show that I said something different and stood by that thing now. I said the same thing now I said then.
You're nodding your head.
The premise being that getting an airbrush allows you to do most hobby things better. Not everything, but most. Is that the premise? That the promise the airbrush gives?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't ever think that was the promise.
I think it absolutely is.
I think I felt that when I got an airbrush. Like, I'm going to be able to skip some educational steps with painting to get a better end result without having to, like, learn the nuances of a new tool, which I discovered is wrong.
Right, yeah.
The airbrush is a whole different animal and has all these different things you have to learn about it.
That's right.
But I felt that.
Okay. Audience, you'll have to tell us down in the comments how you thought of the airbrush when you bought it. I mean, here's what I'll say. Using it as a generic, more all-purpose tool when you start, it will provide. So, like, let's take just like a completely new miniature painter, right? Like somebody who's very new in the process. Yeah. If I give them a brush and give them an airbrush, okay, and like kind of explain the basics of how both tools work. So let's say they're like competent, right? They don't sputter the airbrush or clog it immediately, and they don't, they know how to control their paint at a basic level and apply it to a model, right? Okay, cool. If I do that, they will paint probably a better looking model with the airbrush, okay? Even trying to like overuse it.
Uh-huh.
All right?
Yeah.
And that's because it will do some of those things that especially newer painters will find very hard, very well, like create transitions and stuff like that, right? So like I think of you're a song of Kings and Fire War Conquest minis, okay? You know that game?
No, it's dead now. CMOD's going under.
That's fine.
It's white guys versus white guys.
Yes, the game where dirty white boys fight each other for control of a kingdom. Yes. At any rate, you did a nice you had the water ocean people. And I don't know, that's what they were.
Water boys.
That's what they were, right? They were ocean people. That's what
Greyjoy.
Sure, they liked the ocean. Am I wrong?
No.
Okay, thank you. Then, at any rate, and you did this very nice, like, seafoam green to sort of blue transition on a lot of the clothing, and then you would go in and, you'd pack in extra detail, you'd go to the brushwork and stuff like that.
Yep.
And just, like, that step looked really nice, especially for, like, army painting, right? You were able to accomplish that really fast. And I think, like, again, a newer painter would find that, like, really miraculous to be able to do a transition like that. Because I could give them a lot of time with a brush, and they wouldn't get there. Because acrylic paint isn't meant to work like that.
Right.
Okay. And so I think there is value to learning the tool. But yes, if you try to overuse it or use it badly, you will have bad results. The paint brush has a much higher skill ceiling and a longer learning curve than the airbrush does for our purposes in miniature painting.
Yeah.
Okay? Because the brush as a tool has not really changed in its fundamental construction in 4,000 years. Okay? That's a pretty well-established tool that humans are using. When we're not making technological advancements in a new AI model roll out every 5 days, we haven't changed the brush in 4,000 years. It's like the shark, it just like evolved and it's just good. It's been around since the time of the dinosaurs or whatever. It's there, You know, it's good. Doesn't need to evolve anymore. It's perfect. That's what the paintbrush is. And so the key is, the reason it's been so enduring is because, yes, it's like changing your angle slightly gives you a different capability in learning when to use the tip and when to use the side and how to manage the consistency and how much water is in there and the belly of your brush and all this kind of stuff. It's just like, it's huge. You can go forever. So yeah, there's a lot more to learn. You should spend time learning the brush.
I want to go back to the statement you made of the brand new painter and new painter, and you gave them each the same model, and the airbrush persons would look better than the brush paints persons. I agree with that. Check on those same two painters that did that over the last year. Check on them in year 1 and check on them in year 2. And you'd be shocked how big that difference changes.
I agree.
Just spending more time with that. And that's the whole, like, obviously.
That's why I'm saying higher skill ceiling, right?
Yes,
If
exactly.
if they don't invest the time in the brush person will surpass them.
Yes. Yes. The airbrush has a much, I don't want to say much higher, but has a higher floor, right? So you're starting out on day 1 further ahead, but at a certain point they catch up to you. And obviously this is set to be a controversial opinion on something, but I wanted to do that to raise attention to what I'm really trying to say is I know that the brush can be finicky and it can be frustrating and it feels like it's not working great and it feels like things are slower, but trust in that in the long term, and you'll have these little moments of satisfaction as you can see that happening, the improvement with that brush skill. With an airbrush, I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying just be careful to not lean on it so much and to help recognize the things that it does well. Like when you talked about what you do with a display model, with your back and forth, and I've seen you do that in person for amazing results. That's exactly what I said for the number 3 thing that it does well. In working with thin, transparent colors to build color depth and to smooth things out, it's really good at that.
Yeah.
You just have to be careful that you're doing exactly what you're doing and you're using it not to actually create the shapes, the volumes, and the opaque layers.
Yeah.
And that's a tricky thing that I think any of us that have spent time with airbrush have had to go through that shit. You know, those moments happen.
Sure. I mean, my advice would be, I would modify that slightly, because my advice would just be become familiar with all of your tools, right? In miniature painting, we have a wide set of tools available. Like you mentioned washes, right? But you could also include things like dry brushing. That's a completely different brush.
Or dry pigments.
Brush dry, all right? And like there are display level painters who use dry brushing quite heavily in amazing ways. But you have to train that skill up to actually get the right effects out of it. Like you can't just be Byron overnight, right? You've seen what Byron can accomplish with dry brushing, or like Victoria Lamb. That's like another classic example, right? So my advice would just be like the actual learning curve here, the journey, is each tool, your big fat makeup dry brush, your sponge, your artist brush, your synthetic brush, your airbrush, all these different tools that you're going to use to apply paint have different situations where they excel and different situations where they fail. And what you should learn is within your methodology and application and process, where do each of those tools excel and have a home in your workflow and where don't they? Right. That's the journey, because I think you could get to a lot of places because you happen to follow a different process, right? Like you can be Sergio or you can be Matt DiPietro, right? Very different processes in general, but they both make amazing looking miniatures, right? So it's not like you have to have one of these tools in the process, other than like you probably are going to use some kind of brush at some point. But the point is you're going to use them all to different levels. So figure out the level that works for your workflow.
Right. And that's kind of the conclusion for this is like, find what works for you and don't feel pressured by what you feel you're told you should do and what tools you're supposed to use and what approach you're supposed to do to get better and why this looks better than this. Well, whatever works for you is the way that you should, follow. And I just have felt a couple years ago when I just was like the shackles that I completely understandably put on myself of what my expectation was for me to grow as a painter was to become really good with this tool. When I just like threw that aside and said, I'm not going to put that pressure on myself anymore and focus on what I wanted to do, which was to just try to get as good with the brush as I could, I personally saw a massive amount of growth and made me frustrated that I didn't do it sooner, that I didn't try to make this tool all-purpose. And that could just be in my own head, but I feel that there is enough of a bloodline that runs through our hobby and what we're told in all sorts of places online that's what the tool is for. You're just not good enough yet.
John focused on his true love, which was leaving the airbrush behind and painting only the front top of the miniature.
Yes.
And leaving everything else.
Yeah, the back is
unfinished.
boring. The back is boring. Anyone that says differently is a fool.
We keep bringing up opacity in regards to the airbrush, and I feel like it doesn't really matter with the airbrush because it applies paint so smoothly that you can't tell that's not opaque. With a paintbrush, you apply paint like, a base coat, and then you can see certain areas where, okay, well, there's a bit of a streak there, or it's more opaque in the recess that is in the raised surface, so I know I have to do more layers to reach opacity. With an airbrush, it doesn't matter because it hits all surfaces fairly equally if you're like trying to get around stuff. I've never felt like the lack of opacity, even as it relates to saturation of color, has ever been an issue with airbrushing. Like working on top of it with a paintbrush, that's when the problems come up. But with the tool itself, none.
Yeah, I don't know. I work back and forth quite a lot, and I use I do find what John said to have some resonance with me because I'm using the paintbrush to build up what I would refer to as as tonal purity. Okay, so like because an airbrush, because it's just a bunch of tiny little dots, it does unless you really really hammer into the area. It doesn't really establish tonal purity in the same way that the brush does. Like just the amount of paint in the space is different.
Yeah, but I find it doesn't matter. It only matters in context, which is in relation to something that's being brushed on. But if that context isn't there, then you can get away with murder. It doesn't matter that it's not tonally pure.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on ultimately what you're painting for. Again, like if I was going for gaming figures or something like that, I agree with you completely. I wouldn't care at all, right? If I'm trying to do like a display model, then I'm trying to make the color, like I'm needing to punch up saturation, opacity, all sorts of, and like color transitions and subtlety to a lot higher degree. Like if I'm going to be serious about this being a display model, then I just have to go a lot farther. And so any kind of little inconsistencies like that have to get beaten out of the thing.
Well, I mean, even for an army, don't you want it to pop at a table? At arms
yeah,
level?
But it does pop, though.
Right. That's more a matter of like your composition and your color choices, and you can get there with just the airbrush.
My issue with it is twofold. One, I think that it greatly struggles with opacity, and there are ways around it. You can put down white first, so I base coat it a dark blue. I then zenithal white from above, and then I come in with my seafoam green, and then as that goes over that white, you get that pure seafoam green. But again, it's not perfect. It's about building that opacity to get a pure tone that is vibrant. So there are ways to do it, but again, then we're talking about more steps. But it's still quicker if you're doing a whole army. The other issue is when you're dealing with trying to create an opaque layer with an airbrush, you have the restrictions of it only creating a single shape. Okay, it's only creating a circle. So it could be a really tiny circle, it could be a really wide circle that covers the whole model, but it's only one shape. And when you're dealing with an opaque paint, or you're trying to create opacity over the top, that's brought into great consideration compared to what is the actual shape that you're painting on the model there. Because you can only make it a circle. You can deal with angles, and you can kind of adjust it a bit to try to take advantage of understanding that cone that you're creating. But you can never make it be a square, or you can never make it be a half moon shape. Your restrictions with the tool, again, understanding the tool and what the things it does and doesn't do, and that is restriction is of the shape that it creates on your model.
I'm not sure I agree with the shape argument because again, like I could certainly do a half moon. One, you can like on a larger figure, you can just mask off a part of it, and then your circle turns into a half moon. You can also if the spray is tight enough, most of the time I use like a 0.15 needle or a 0.2 needle. I can get that thing down to like just slightly larger than an ink pin's ink. So like I can build up whatever shape I want. Yeah, sure. So is your ink pen. So is your brush.
No,
your brush is your brush fundamentally creates a sort of round thing when you set it down. When you touch your brush to a thing, right? What shape is left behind when you touch the brush straight down?
I mean, it does have
Well,
a
it's a circle.
tip.
All right, so moving on.
Yes, because because a
but
paintbrush
yes, then
can
you
only
use
make a
it
circular
in different
shape.
angles and different ways, and you build it up and make other shapes. Yeah, wow, that's how shapes work. Okay, cool. The actual problem that I'm shocked you didn't mention, that I thought you were going to mention, which I would have actually said is something that people screw up when they first make the move to the airbrush. You've left aside like one of the actual weaknesses of the airbrush is that when people lay down a lot of very bright colors, this happens a lot with like zenithal priming in the beginning and stuff like that. When they lay down very bright colors in succession, they blow away the occlusion shadows.
Yes.
So like recesses at all angles get treated almost identically,
Right.
and so that you lose the actual hard separation of the occlusion shadows between each different element. That just means like the shadow in between that my apron is casting on the shirt underneath. There's like a small line of shadow here, and on your miniature you over accentuate those to create the illusion of like sort of clean separation between the elements. The more times in a miniature you alternate light dark light dark light dark light dark, the cleaner and more eye-catching your miniature becomes, and the airbrush blows that away because it just like floods everything with bright paint. So you have to go back in and black line or something like that.
I do discuss that in the video that it's in line with it being faster. This tool is faster. Well, when you actually have to go back in and deal with that, you've lost all of that time, and sometimes more, and sometimes, heaven forbid, you actually make a mistake. There's another issue with an airbrush. Dealing with any mistakes with an airbrush, good fucking luck.
I've never had a problem with it.
I've never made a mistake.
I don't find it like, what's the mistake? It's spider webs. It does some things like, okay, who cares? You let it dry and then you just paint over it. It takes 5 seconds.
And you go over it. So you have to basically redo the section again.
I mean,
Again,
like,
depending how big the issue is.
Yeah, like you can make a mistake with any type of tool in painting, and then you have to
my point is that mistakes that we are all going to make are much more forgiving or easier to fix when it's just with a paintbrush.
I don't know. You ever just like you ever go to touch a part of the miniature and then you drag your paintbrush across something else, like or
rinse it out, scrub it out immediately.
Have you ever tried to paint out something that wasn't totally dry and it rip the whole middle part out of a blend?
100%. Yeah,
that is fatal. Yeah. That is, you have to redo the whole thing because one, the motion, the transition is gone, and two, if you paint over it, you will see the hole that was left behind. So
or you're trying to get into like a small space to hit something, like you're hitting something underneath here, and there's
blow.
There's the glancing blow, but you don't notice it.
Yeah.
You come back later and there's a streak of another color like on a side muscle on their torso, and you're like, where did that get there? How did that happen?
Yeah, that happens to all of us.
Yeah, yes, that's my point. And then you correct it. It's not like this tool is more error proof than anything else or prone to it.
I completely disagree that mistakes on an airbrush are as easily fixable, because everything is you can't fix an airbrush mistake with a paintbrush. Let's be real clear on that, right?
Sure you can. Of course you can.
Yeah, and then it doesn't look like it's airbrush anymore, because the application
you shouldn't be able, if you are using these tools properly, you should not be able to tell the difference between the two at the end. We have played this game before where I have showed you two miniatures. I said one of these I painted completely by brush and one of these I painted by airbrush. Which one's which? And nobody could guess which one was which.
I mean, yeah, it's a Space Marine where it's all spheres and circles and cones.
Yes, I played it with Space Marines. I can play with other miniatures if you want. My point is, if you're using the tools properly, you shouldn't be able to notice the difference, because they're overlapping each other so many times that there's no more distinction anymore.
When there's back and forth with a brush and an airbrush, it's much easier to clean up those mistakes. But when the application method that an airbrush does, where that very smooth haze of transition from those tiny particles, when you have an issue there are like probably hundreds of layers of those tiny particles that have been hit and been hit and been hit. When you have to deal with a mistake with that, you then have to replicate that pattern of hundreds of layers in just the area that you made the mistake in. Or you have to redo that whole section so it all looks uniform in that. And so,
depending on the size of the problem, sure, the easiest way is like, again, I think people overestimate how long it takes to correct errors anyways. And my proof of that is you had some crazy thing happen with your golden demon thing, okay? Like your cat or whatever came and like ate your whole rat tail.
She chewed the tail on the...
That was like a huge mess up on things that you did. You spent a lot of time. But when you went back and fixed it, and you didn't spend as much time. You spent an incrementally small amount of time on the fix, and that was like an animal literally attacking and scratching your paint, right? And yet you spent an incrementally small amount of time compared to what it was to get the original paint, because actually these errors are really small areas.
Yeah.
Right? And it, like, in the end, it'll just be close enough that 99 out of 100 people looking at it wouldn't tell a difference if there was a small variation.
Right. I agree.
So who cares?
Yeah.
Just like fix a stupid thing. Take a minute and fix it. Like, you got a blue shoulder pad. Oops, I spider webbed. Let it dry. I go back over with my base blue. I shoot it with a little bit of blue highlight. Yay, it's done. Okay, next.
Yeah,
It took 3 minutes.
The whole point of this is not to say that it's the most terrible tool and these mistakes could never be fixed. The point is that it is not the magical tool that doesn't make mistakes, and that if you do make mistakes, it's still 10 times faster.
What's the title of the video again?
Yeah.
Airbrush is a scam.
Okay.
I got it. You are a farmer or a crow or something fighting all these scarecrows, all these straw men you're going after. Like, none of these are real points of view, these straw men.
Welcome to the internet.
Yeah, like,
Hey.
Sure.
Let's finish this off by, you mentioned occlusion shading. It reminded me of a brilliant comment that I got from Sir Cami K9886 a few days ago.
I'm ready.
Shading is such BS. Shading is provided by the lamp above your game table. Do you also shade your clothes? No, obviously not, because shadows and highlights are produced by light, not pigments. Boom! You don't need an airbrush. You don't need to highlight or shade. Just fucking base coat everything, guys.
Just
Thank
bring
you,
a
Sir
lamp around
Cammy.
with you.
You just unleashed something in me.
That's what they do with Gundams.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Sometimes, yes. There is. I mean, some Gundams are painted in
The
different
coolest
styles.
looking Gundams aren't painted that way, though.
But coincidentally, Gundams are way bigger
Yeah.
than minis.
Yes. I mean, is it worth explaining why you do need to, in fact, build in shading?
it's not worth it.
Cool.
Anyways, that's the podcast, guys. Thanks for tuning in. No, just kidding. No, for real though, that was a chunky conversation. We're about an hour and a half in.
Wow.
Wow, look at us. Vince, there was something else that you and Scott were talking about. You're talking about games? When we walked
Yeah.
in.
So let's just take a 180 right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about
Okay, so we're gonna pull the handbrake here.
Yeah, I wanted, because Vince is coming in and showing off his new game, I wanted to discuss some of our favorite mechanics that we have found in games that we've played. I thought we could each share one mechanic that we found particularly compelling or cool or interesting, unique, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Do you mind if I set the table here real quick?
Set it.
Okay.
Fork and knife.
Very good. Absolutely. You got the salad fork. You got that other little tiny fork. I don't know what it's for, but it's for something.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? That little tiny one on the
Yeah.
end? What do you use that for? I don't know.
oysters.
Is that what it's for? Is it an oyster fork?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Okay. So I just like put my finger in there and just slurp them, All right, I'm not fancy. At any rate, so yes, as someone who with Rain and Iron, this is the 7th game I've written with Snarling Badger, and probably the 14th or 15th game I've published. Okay, overall.
What the heck?
So, I've written a lot of games and been involved in the production of other games and stuff like that. And one of the things about being a game designer is that you will, in your career, sometimes mechanics will just be like, what do I call them? They're like workhorses, right? They're sort of table stakes. They're there because you need a mechanic to do this thing, so you just use a pretty basic mechanic to do it. You know what I mean? Like, you're not trying to rewrite the world.
Okay.
You
yeah.
just, you know what I mean? It's
rolling to hit, rolling to wound, that kind of thing?
Sure, like a role player mechanic. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's there to do its basic role. It does it fine. Who cares, right?
Yep.
I needed something to be here.
Yeah.
And I didn't need to make it magical or reinvent the world, because you can't make a game where every single mechanic is some radically crazy new thing.
Oh, yeah. You shouldn't do that, actually.
Right, correct. That's what I'm saying. Not only is it mentally impossible, but it would actually make the game worse
100%.
overall.
Yep. 100%.
Because people bring preconceived notions and expectations, and you do want to meet those at some point.
And that makes learning a game way easier. And
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yes, I rolled a d6, and on a 4+ I hit. Okay, I get that. That's a very common sort of mechanic.
Actually, it's everything lower than 4.
Oh, sure. That's fine, too.
Yeah. What game does that?
But, I mean...
Sounds like a stupid game.
Conquest. Last Argument of the Kings does that, right? It's
is it?
everything
I
in
don't know.
lower, I think.
I couldn't tell you.
We just reverse it.
I love roll under mechanics. But roll under mechanics usually ask people to do subtraction as part of the game, and humans can't do subtraction. If you ever
Yes.
ask a human being to do
Facto.
anything other than addition, things get rough. At any rate, but sometimes when you're a game designer, you will write some rules that you like go, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
This is a good one. I got a good one here.
Kind of the hook of the game sometimes.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just like you got to an interesting subsystem and you just had a good idea and you're like, wow, that really came together, right? And so my point is, and then there'll be some mechanics you write and you're like, oh God, that didn't come out how I want, right? Hopefully those don't go all the way to publish, but it happens. And so over the course of your career, you'll have kind of the triaged bucket of all three things. And so I was looking back, and we were talking kind of before the show about just like our favorite mechanics. Yeah, and I was like, because you were asking me about like what mechanics I liked in this game, and sort of other upcoming things that I'm not going to discuss here that we're designing here at Snarling Badger Studios. We're always hard at work for you. But anyway, yeah. So that's kind of the base, right? That some mechanics that you read or you've designed or whatever, they just stand apart as being like, whoa. That was really good.
Yeah.
The designer was cooking here.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Using some modern terminology.
Yeah. I'm down with the kids.
You bring the youth
That's
to this
right.
podcast.
That's what I bring to the, yes, absolutely.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yes. Hello, my fellow children. Yes, absolutely. Fellow teens.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want me to go first or who's going first?
I got one ready. You can go first, whatever works.
No, tee it up. You go.
All right. I love a particular mechanic from Guild Ball, one of my favorite miniature war games, and it's actually the influence allocation. So in a team, everyone's got a stat line, and you have an INF stat line. It's influence. And the first number is how much influence that character brings to the whole team's pool. And the second number, after the slash, is how much influence you can allocate to that player. So on a team of 6 individuals, you might have 10 to 13 influence to allocate to each model in a round. And at the beginning of the round, before anyone goes, you have to like give these little stacks of influence tokens to all of these players. And so what that does is it requires you as an individual to formulate a plan before any dice are rolled, or before you really see what your opponent does or anything. So it requires you to think a little bit in that stage. And then 2, it requires you, because things inevitably are going to go away, right?
Sure, of course.
So it also
no plan
requires
survives contact with the enemy. Classic.
Exactly. And so it also requires you to bake in some safety nets. So like I'm going to put some influence on this particular character who is always going to be valuable, or could always do this particular ability, or whatever it may be. So there's a lot of thinking that goes into just that initial step. And then when you get into the actual game, then how you actually spend the influence points based on what's happening, how you react, how you press when you should press, and all these things starts to unfold in this really awesome strategic way. So it's a way to indicate, here's the other thing I love about it, is that it indicates to your opponent what maybe you plan to do. Like,
yeah, sure.
If I put a stack of 6 influence on Obulus, my team captain, who has a certain ability that costs 4 influence, you probably might know I'm planning to do that thing, and so then that might adjust how you treat that player and how you assign and allocate your influence. So it's a basic thing.
I like it.
But there's so much in it, and then there's so much in the actual execution of it during the round itself.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by like pre-action
Yes.
allocation of resources.
Yeah,
and like especially when that's only partially communicated knowledge to the opponent. So what I mean by that is like it like the situation you described there. The opponent knows where you put it, but they don't know what exactly you're going to do right with it.
Yeah.
I like that kind of stuff. I also like it sometimes when you both. I like a blind man's bluff pre-allocation. So that say you both have to allocate with complete lack of knowledge of what the other player did. Okay. And then like you reveal and it's like, oh, okay, boy, I chose wrong, right? So there's you can also do like alternating activations of these kinds of pre-allocations, right? Where like I assign some and then you assign some and so on and so forth. It's just lots of different variants of the thing, but I like all of the variants because exactly what you said, it forces you to think ahead. It ends up becoming a skill testing mechanic. It raises the skill ceiling for the game overall. And it allows you to discover more about the game and like feel like you're getting good at it as you play it more because you're like, oh, okay, I get it now.
You had a plan and then it actually worked out, and it's like, okay, that feels particularly good for a gamer, I believe.
Exactly. No, I love that. That's great.
Yeah. There are certain games that I don't remember what it was, but I played one at Adepticon where instead of there being tokens that you use that count as like a currency, you like take a whole move and place it in. It's like a little, I don't know, piece of plastic, and it says like attack or move forward and to the left, and you place it upside down in front of the unit.
Yeah.
And then your opponent gets to pick for you which unit does its thing first, not knowing what the thing is under the token.
So that's like the blind man's bluff
right
allocation there. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's like, I know it's going to do something, but I have no idea what it is. Flip it. And it's like, okay, I'm going to move.
A lot of classic, like, if you've ever seen sometimes these will get played at conventions, the classic, like, World War II airplane games where you have to adjust both, like, they're on little sticks. It's the planes on little sticks, and they can raise up and down. Okay, no, that's fine. This is so a bunch of these older historical World War II air games. That's what you do. So like you have your planes, you're playing on a big table. It's just like clouds is the bottom because you're all supposed to be up in the sky, right? Because you're airplanes, and that's how they fight. And you have a stick that can think like the antenna on your car. Yeah, it goes up and down. I say that because
wow, they haven't done that in like 30 years.
Yes. Like cars are.
I can visualize the airplane thing. We got it.
So you have to set how high it is, how much it moves forward, and when you attack. All right. And so all of the people around the table are doing this without knowledge of exactly what the other players are going to choose.
Okay.
So you're all in this dogfight, and like, another plane accidentally like moved into your space, and you've hit like fire the guns, and it's like, brrrr, and you just go right. Oops, sorry. And then you just go right down. So yeah, that kind of thing. That's blind man's bluff allocation.
Okay.
Cool.
I like that.
Cool. I had one we talked about earlier, but I have a different one I want to talk about now. The one I talked about earlier was about the game Villainous, the board game, where everyone's playing a totally different game.
Yeah.
Where every single character feels like you're playing an entirely different game, but you can still mess with each other enough to slow people down, to kind of thwart their plans. You're rewarded for learning what your opponent's characters do and how they win the game. So you know who's closest, you know who can run your table of 4 people playing who to gang up
but
on.
Asymmetrical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you can also create the game with different levels of skill requirements based on the character you pick. There are certain villains that are much easier for a newer player. There's certain much more convoluted, complex ones for an experienced player, and that doesn't mean that they're necessarily one is stronger than the other, because fuck Prince John, that guy's stupid. He just has to collect coins. Anyway.
Is that like the Robin Hood bad guy?
Yep.
Okay.
So...
There's a hilarious line from that movie where like one of the tiny little bunnies says like something super heavy, like death to tyranny. And there was like some awesome shirt that I saw and like a metal aesthetic of that bunny raising his wooden sword says death to tyranny.
Amazing.
But the one I want to talk about a little bit more, I don't know if you guys have any experience for this. It's from a game called Oathsworn. It's a tabletop RPG board game. So it's the new hotness of RPG in a box kind of a thing where there's no DM and you guys all play cooperatively. So for your attacks in combat, it's a card system. So you have cards, and different cards have different cooldowns. This is your resource that you use. So they have anywhere from your basic attack has got a 0 cooldown, meaning you can use it every round. And then there's a cooldown of 1 round, 2 rounds, and 3 rounds. And so the more powerful your abilities are, the more time will have to go past before you could get to use them again. And so it's a great way of not having an overly convoluted resource system and using your more powerful things. And it also rewards strategy of like, okay, I want to really get the most out of my 3 cooldowns, so I really want to use them when they can be used the most. However, if I use them earlier in a fight in a less maybe advantageous position, I get more time to get them to come back to me. And am I going to have enough rounds to do that? And then it also allows you to add this other level of strategy in the game of there are tokens that you can earn, or you have abilities that you can use that allow you to rotate one card or all your cards or whatever. And then also, whenever you play let's say a card that's a 2 cooldown, all your other cards that are on 2 cooldown, they all rotate 1 to the left, so they go down to 1 cooldown. So sequencing your abilities in the right order can give you advantage of really getting your order correctly. So it's fairly simplistic and elegant. And what you do is you have your character card that has all your stats, and you have your piles around each of the corners. The one right in front of you is 0, and then it's 3, 2, 1, like counterclockwise for some reason, but whatever. And so the piles rotate around. So it's just like, it's very easy and simplistic to understand, the way it rotates in the game.
It's very tactile.
Very
right?
yeah, it's very tactile.
Yeah, I
and you
love
can
that.
see your abilities and kind of be like, okay, but I really want to get this one back. So that means this turn I need to use this to push it into my 0 slot. So next turn I have it on my cards. And it's just like, it's been so elegant, but there's a ton of depth to it. Like having that balance of really easy to pick up, but you're rewarded for learning the strategy and how your character plays completely different from a different character, and what kinds of abilities do you lean on more, because some of them are like a setup and some of them are payoff abilities, and how can you balance those when they're in rotation and that kind of thing. So it's really, really enjoyable.
No, and I think there's a whole category of like great mechanics that fall into that very simple to understand but a lifetime to master kind of thing.
Oh, and those are the best. Those are the best.
The sort of Othello mechanic or Go or something like that, right?
100%.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. It's always, and those are so hard to design, because you can imagine setting up like the standard 4-box, right, where your x-axis is simplicity of rules and your y-axis is like depth of capability, right? And getting in that magic box where it's like very simple but super deep is like that's the magic quadrant, as it were.
Those
right?
are the games that win Spiel the Jahres, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So it's just those are hard to design.
Yeah.
Okay, for mine, I'm gonna do 1.5 because I'm gonna cheat because I got to go last. Ha! Take that. I'm the guest.
Oh, he did too.
Oh, okay.
So now I get one more.
That's fine. All right. Then we'll all do 2. There you go. I'm not cheating anymore. Yay! Equality. All right. So, my first one is very simple. It is one of my favorite sets of mechanics of all time. It's actually sort of a mechanic family, and that is the mech creation rules out of BattleTech. I think the mech creation rules out of BattleTech are the greatest, certainly the greatest mech creation rules ever made. Probably one of the best, like,
list writing,
like character creating type of things, or however you want to think of it, list writing mechanics ever created. It's so wonderfully balanced against itself, especially in its sort of blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into the deep BattleTech lore, but especially when you're using, say, standard 2750 to 3025 inner sphere tech, only the additional clan tech can sometimes throw this off and not make it not as well balanced, but that's okay. That doesn't matter. Here we go. So
those are words, I think.
At any rate,
I don't think so, actually.
The point being is that, like, the way that the system, every one thing you do pulls on at least 2 to 3 other parts of the system. Your engine size, that then creates weight. The more weight takes up more space. You know, like weapons generate heat. They can require ammo or not. Like the non-ammo weapons, like your plasma stuff, generates a ton more heat. So then you got to balance that with more heat sinks. But now that's more weight that you got to compensate for, and like blah, 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 blah. The way the inner frame works and handles how much armor you can put on it. And well, you put on all the armor you can do. Well, that's now less weight to do other things and pack guns on. And like, so everything is just pulling on everything else in this beautiful ballet, right? That there's no perfect mech, right? Everything can get countered, can have a slightly different design. And so there just isn't one perfect design. And so it's just about the permutations and like what you're going for with it. You can build out and you can build extreme skews or balanced mechs. You know, you can go for like the speed demon that like has one little medium laser and is just like running around trying to get behind you and be like, pew, 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 got you in the back, pow, pow, go for the crits. Or you can just build like the all-rounder who wants to just kind of be out there and be like the good role player in the center of the thing. It's a genius system. It more or less has remained unchanged throughout the history of BattleTech largely. And I just think it's stunningly well created and thought through. So that's my first one. My second one is, do either of you ever play Malifaux?
I've played it a couple times, maybe like 3 times total.
Okay. So I'm just going to simply say like the card system here that like replaces the dice, but specifically the way you can cheat. Right? You get your like cheat hand. Yeah. Okay. So you can like cheat fate or whatever. And you're like, boom. And then you cheat fate, but then they get a chance to cheat fate on top of it. And you end up just like it's a wonderful example where the mechanic is very simple, but meets the aesthetics of the game, because Malifaux has that like pseudo Western vibe to it.
Yep.
And so like the poker in the saloon, the aces and eights, you know, like it's a gunslingy game. Mm-hmm. So like moving to cards in general was very smart, but then actually having the like card up your sleeve cheat mechanic where then both people are cheating back and forth just fits so darn well. And it's so fun when you pull out like, you know, the ace and just like slam it down and you're like, can't nobody beat that, you know. I just think it's clean, it's evocative. It's again, I think the best rules also tell you something about the game,
100%.
right?
They evoke the feeling of what you should be doing.
Yes, and I think that one really like, bing, right in the bullseye hits that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have just a small one. I haven't even played this game. I just read the rule book, and it was like I read this rule, and I thought it was brilliant. In rank and flank games where you have a block of dudes, the kinds of games you guys love to play.
Love me a rank and flank, sure.
Yeah.
Pike and shot, other words like that. Yes, keep going.
The question is what can you see with a giant brick of dudes? And oftentimes it's a 45-degree angle on either side of that brick, left and right. And then maybe like individual dudes can see all around them if they're like a character or something.
Classic.
In Oathsworn, the way this game works is you draw a line from the top corner of your first rank to the back rank of full dudes you have. So you make an X, and that is how wide your field of view is. And so the more dudes you have, the narrower your field of view becomes. And as a unit loses guys, it widens and widens and widens because that X becomes more and more obtuse. And you get more and more field of view. And that's just so easy to visualize and so easy to tell someone, and they know it and they understand it, and it makes sense as well. Sure. Less guys are going to be more aware of their surroundings. They're going to march less orderly. They're going to act as independent operators more, and that's all represented in that single clean idea.
Oh, that's cool. I think I've seen that maybe a couple other places as well. I think,
Okay.
but so I don't know if maybe this one was the first one to do it. But yeah, I like that mechanic. Yeah. I agree. The line of sight things, is always like, God, if there's one rule I hate writing, I'll tell you right now.
Dude,
like,
ladders. Fucking ladders, dude.
I honestly, with ladders, I've just been like, they're open ground. That's easy. Done. Okay, great. And like, you don't need to think much more deeply. And that's like the example of those sort of role player table stakes when I talk about.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, you can put ladders around. They make vertical climbing be treated as open ground. There you go. I assume people are shimmying up or shimmying down. Go nuts. Like, I'm not interested in that level of granularity for most games I'm writing, right? Where it's like, well, what would be the time difference to walk up the rungs versus, up on the ground? It's like, no. They're the same. But like that line of sight and cover and like all that sort of related thing of like, what can this thing see is truly the thorn in my paw of like every game I've ever written.
It's just true line of sight, Vince.
Yeah, it's just true line of sight.
Easy.
What could be the problem with that? Yeah. Almost nothing.
Yeah, almost nothing. I don't know. What does your mini actually fucking see? It's like there's no way of actually determining that. It's like we both get down to the ground and kind of look from our various perspectives, and we're like,
but if I close my left eye and only look through my right eye,
I can see his gun tip. It's like, does that count? It's like, no.
Yeah, I'll just let me go into first person view here. Okay.
Yeah, actually impossible. But cool. Those are some of our favorite game mechanics. Let us know what you've enjoyed from other games that you have played, both miniature war games, tabletop games, role-playing games, all things included. Let us know in the comment section down below. All right, next up we have feedback for a patron here. Who is it this week, John?
It's Castle of Paint on Instagram.
Okay.
A.K.A. Ian Roberts. I don't know if you wanted us to say your name or not, but too late! And his
address is, and his social security number is.
Right.
I like this model a lot.
All right. You give me your thoughts, Vince.
So he painted a ranger.
Yeah, it's one of your elves.
It is. Also, I love how undoubtedly that ear came chipped. And by the way, if you ever buy a model from me and any part of it is broken, send me an email. I'll give you the part for free. No questions asked. But I love how he worked with that broken ear and added a little bit of blood to that ear to make it look like it was a battle wound.
Yeah, there was just like a little creepy crawly. There's an
yeah, I just bit it off.
in
Yeah,
the night.
I love it.
So yeah, this is the smaller scale version, right?
No, this is definitely got to be 75 millimeter.
Is it?
It's got to be.
Oh, I guess I didn't look at it too closely. I gave it to Vince to let Vince give us.
Yes, I'm looking. Yeah, this looks like the 54, whatever the bigger one.
Okay. One of the things that initially jumped out to me was the really vibrant pinks and purples on the base drew my eye away from the model pretty quickly. I don't know if you guys felt that same way. As we have I really like
A little bit.
Like the greens and blues and natural browns in the outfit of the elf, and I really think that those work well together. But when you have those pinks and purples on the base, Maybe even adding some rosiness to his cheeks or something to bring that liveliness to his skin. So you kind of create that triangle with that. With
Yeah,
the
it's such a bright, saturated color, and it's in 2 places and doesn't have a third up top.
Yep.
Yep.
And then that would be just a simple fix, or put some flowers on his horns.
There you go. Little flower crown.
Yeah.
I didn't notice the pink, I think because I just immediately zoomed in. But what I will say is drawing attention upward is that most of this model is a dark value. And the only thing that's bright is his pasty white skin and his face and his antlers. So that is creating a very satisfying triangle right in this upper quadrant of the model.
I agree.
But I do agree with the pink. That should be somewhere else on the model, up top, preferably. I love the color palette, mostly colds, mostly greens. I think it works. It works with the hair being blonde as well, kind of sticks out as more of a warm color, like in that composition. I like how the face that's below is not as pasty and bright as the elf up top. I think that makes sense compositionally. The bright shoe, a lower part in the model, is a bit weird. You have this dark navy blue pant leg and then the kind of a desaturated military green. It's like lighter, almost like a sage, lower on the model. And I think that kind of sticks out a little bit for me. But I'm just nitpicking at this point. I think the eyes might need a little bit more clarity, and admittedly the eyes on the Ranger are kind of small, but like the white of his eye is blending into the pasty whiteness of his flesh, and I want to see a little bit of a line in between those two details.
Say an occlusion shadow, for example.
An occlusion shadow.
Hey, look, we learned a new word today.
I love it. I love big science-y sounding words.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that when you paint the eyes, you start by painting them all a darker color, and that way as you kind of carve into it to get the eye shape, you'll have naturally that bit of that slightly darker color that'll rim that naturally. And he does have a bit of like eye, lower lids and stuff that you could, kind of sink those in a little bit darker too, and that would make those eyes pop a little bit more. I think you painted the pupils pretty well. Yeah. On his quiver is like a bright emerald green.
Yeah.
And I like that color. I wish it was somewhere on the front. I think we could bring it back.
It's kind of like a phthalo green, kind of incubi darkness if you're a GW paint user color. And that, yeah.
Bring it back.
It's kind of on the patch on his thigh, but not really anywhere else. I think that would have been a nice color for maybe his shawl or something like that, up close top.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that. So, but well done. It's nice and clean and reads very well. So.
Yeah. The base, I think, is worth talking about as well. Obviously, there's the sculpted branch that the Ranger sits on that he used in leverage, but also he built a base surrounding it. I think it looks really great. I think my only feedback would be that it all seems like painted plastic, other than the very minor use of like flowery tufts that I see in the very front and kind of off on the edges here. I kind of want to see more of that satin paint job broken up with different kinds of materials, like we talked about in a previous time where you put fur on a model, and it was just so striking. It looks so different than painted plastic, and I think that's one of the great opportunities on a base is for it to appear very different than a model and to lend contrast in that way. And so I think a little bit of that, either it's using dry pigments, which looks very different than painted plastic, whether it's static tufts, whether it's an enamel wash, whatever it may be, I think using that more can lend some contrast and difference of appearance between the model and the base. I think it helps it out a little bit.
Very nice.
Well,
You did a great job.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's
It's a wonderful paint job.
very good. Yes. That was awkward.
Are you gonna say something?
I don't know.
All right. Well, thank you very much for supplying that mini for critique. If you want to get your models critiqued by us live on TUP, you can do so by becoming a patron. That's one of the rewards you get as being a patron, supplying your models for feedback. You can also give us topics to discuss, and you also get access to an extended portion of the podcast. It's about 20 minutes longer, where we discuss things like new techniques we tried out in the hobby, what we learned, and also we share a model that was painted by someone else that we love and why we love it. Welcome to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with us all the way until the end. If you want to pick up a copy of Rain in Iron, you can do so via one of the links down in the show notes or description, depending on where you are listening to this podcast. Check it out.
I want to see how long we make that uncomfortable thing last. So the people thought the podcast was over, but we were still here talking.
2.5 seconds is about how long?
2.5 seconds.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
that's our limit. That's
Yeah.
it. We want to thank Vince for coming over and hanging out today. And, this is the most exciting point. Now we get to go eat lunch together and talk about nerdy shit.
I am very excited.
Yeah. Like we haven't just been talking about nerdy shit for
Like,
2 hours anyway.
No, now we get into the deep nerdery.
Yeah, like the thoroughly unplugged version. So, yeah, thanks, Vince. Thanks for sharing your game. Thanks for being a decent human sometimes, and thanks for being wrong about our discussion about airbrushes today. I appreciate you agreeing with me in everything that I said, even when you went into convoluted way to get there. Do you have any final statements?
Well, thank you both for having me. It is always a great pleasure to come here. I do really enjoy hanging out with both of you.
He takes the high road.
Yeah. Oh no, he's gonna loop around.
Oh, okay.
It's coming. It's coming.
Is this the loop right here?
I love you both, and I'm glad that we got to do this together. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you check out the game, and it's gonna be a great day.
Straight road, no loop.
And go subscribe to Fireball the Gazebo on YouTube.
That's right. Check out Fireball the Gazebo so you can hear more of John's nonsensory and me clearly explaining why he's wrong.
I need that.
That's basically it. I need at every point in my life someone that actually knows what the fuck they're talking about.
That's why I'm here.
That's it. That's it.
Well, if you enjoy the podcast and you want to support us, we mentioned earlier how you can get on our Patreon. But if you don't have bucks to spend, you can also do it in various free ways. If you know how to whitelist a YouTube channel, you can do that for our channel. We play an ad every 30 minutes. You can share our podcast with your nerdy friends. You can also give us a review wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Those interactions pushes up in the metrics and allow more people to see and hear our wonderful, beautiful voices that are certainly not annoying.
Let's not go overboard here.
Okay.
They're manageable at best.
Manageable.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, that's why we have people like Vince on, because then they kind of bring us up. That people, it's like, oh, well, maybe there's a little bit of legitimacy to what's going on here.
Yeah. We rely on guest episodes for that.
Yeah.
Legitimacy.
They just carry a lot of weight. You have to, if this is, Life of Pi situation, you are the tiger, Vince.
Oh, nice.
Right? But the tiger is also us inside the whole time. We were the tiger, right?
Would you say we all have the eye of the tiger?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
excellent.
I got that reference.
Okay, we got there.
But I haven't seen Laugh of Pi, so.
Oh, it's the one where there's the tiger on the
Yeah,
lifeboat.
I've seen the cover.
You need to watch it, dude. There's a tiger inside of all of us. God, you ruined it. Anyway, we're going to catch you sometime soon, and then I'm supposed to say something here on the...
Flippity flop.